guys, Mike Newkirk here. This is the Sysops Nuke of Itchy Butt BBS and Color 64 BBS version 8.1 Alpha. So today we're going to be talking about how to make games from 7.37. Now 7.37, the older version of Color 64, has a ton of games out there. And unfortunately when 8.0 and 8.1 came out, they did not have a large pool. I think it was Empire, and I forget what else, but there wasn't a lot. So one of the things that luckily they had documented in their manual was how to convert some of the 7.37 files over for use with 8.1. One of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to show you how to go ahead and get this incorporated. We're going to be using Sysres as the tool to be able to make these updates. But there are a lot of tools out there that you can use, and so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So first things first is you need to find a game that you want. I think today we're going to go after Wheel of Fortune. So that's 34 blocks, BBS Wheel. So this is in a D64 file, so we're going to load up our Vice Simulator, attach this disk, and get BBS Wheel onto our BBS disk media. Now, if you don't have Sysres, it's really easy to get. You can jump over to the archive.org and download the Solidus Sysres, or you can even get it down at CSDB, which is a modified version by Fairlight. Both of them are equally excellent. Okay, so we downloaded our Sysres program, the D64 image. Now, one thing I will say is that this does not run well in the Lieutenant Kernel environment. So what you would probably have to do if you have a Lieutenant Kernel build is you will have to go ahead and disable the cartridge to go back in the regular 64 environment. So before we load up Sysres, let's take a look at the original program. So here we are. This is the BBS Wheel of Fortune for Color 64 7.37 as it was written. And the big thing we're going to look for is the big main go sub jump. This is the core of the program. So this go sub 8004, I can skip that because I know that 8004 is actually a log entry. So they're setting up a log entry saying the player's gone into Wheel of Fortune and they go sub to the log entry. If you went down to 8004, you would actually see that that is what it is. It's a log entry. So our next big one is this go sub 3600. My bet is that's it right there. So we go down to 3600. And there we are. That is the start of the main program going down. So a lot of times you'll see that they've got these peak statements in here. They're actually doing a dimension of an array. And so that looks like the core of the setup. And then they're going to go ahead and go into the main portion of the program. They're going to show up a high score screen, it looks like. And from there, it starts printing out information. So what we're going to do is we're going to start converting some of these statements into what 8.0 or 8.1 would do. The main thing we have to do first is pull out this main program. So starting at 3600, I'm probably going to go all the way to the very bottom, and that looks about right. It's actually quite a small program. All right, so we're going to load up Sysres, and we're going to start modifying this program. All right, so Sysres loaded. So now we're going to go ahead and get our disk. Go ahead and attach that. All right, so there's our program, BBS Wheel. If we did a directory, go ahead and lowercase, and then load BBS Wheel. All right, so our program's loaded. Looks good. Now we know that the program starts at 3600. So I'm going to delete 0, 2, 3735. Alright, so now that's our main program. Now if you follow along in the Color64 BBS wiki, this is at www.color64wiki.itchybutt.org, and you go down to Program How To. There's a module there called Add Games for 8.1 Alpha. Now you can do this for 8.0, you could do it for 8.1. 8.1 Alpha, it works the same with the exception that 8.1 Alpha uses BBS Games as the menu driver for launching games. In the older versions, they use the mod menu. I'm not as good with that one as I am with my own product, so I may speak to a little bit to it, but not much. But still, the conversion of the program is the same. From there, you'd want to go back to the menu and go from conversion from older versions, converting 737 modules. In this, it tells you about the module overviews. They've had modifications in the ML commands in the newer versions of Color64, as well as ML variables and how they're used. So in the original versions, you have syscx and peakcx methods. Those were replaced. There's a conversion chart here that tells you what you convert those to. So if you see a sysc1, that's actually the new command $. The same goes if you see a peak C statement. Those are converted as well, and you see those here. So step 1, determine the core source code for the module being converted. We just did that. We looked and we found that line 3600 was the core code. So that's what needs to be converted. We deleted all code except for the core code. And now we have to begin replacing all the sysc and peakc statements with the conversion chart. Now here I give you in the manual the sysres commands that do this. So it's very, very simple. So we're going to do that now. We're going to first look at sysc0. So sysc0 is going to be the number sign there. So we're going to use the command change C at sysc0 at, and then we're going to put in that number sign and then another at. Making sure I'm typing this in right. Okay, and you can see it's starting to go through and converting all those instances of that sysc0 and replacing it with the number sign. Okay, so now we want to do the same thing with sysc1. Okay, the next one we're going to do is sysc5. And that's going to become the 01 command. That all goes back to this table. sysc5 is .01. Okay, only one statement there. Now we're going to look and we're going to see if there's any peak statements there. Okay, there was no peak C statements there. Then finally, we're going to make sure that all sysc statements were accounted for here. So we're going to do a find. There's no more sysc statements, so we're clean there. Okay, now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and just save what we got so far. All right, so looking back at our program, one thing I want to point out, I was looking at this line earlier with you guys. Notice that it comes right before a dim statement, and it's going to peak 49 and peak 50, as well as 47, 48. So one of the things that the new Color 64 BBS versions do is they have a variable stack where you can stack a variable state and then go to a new state. And I think that's what they're doing here. In fact, if you look, so they're looking at location 49. And if you look at this screen, location 49 happens to be .19. This is a stack command as well as .18. So if we look in the EML command set here, and you go down to .18 and .19, this is your variable stack and then a variable killer. So what we could do in our new module is we could set at line 3600 a stack command, and then after the completion of the program, where you see this 36005 probably is what they were doing, is restore our variables. Another alternative is if you're using version 8.1 alphas in the BBS games module, before you call this program, you can stack your variable state there and then do a clear after it returns. So let's go ahead and check this out. I'm going to go to line 3600, and here we're just going to put an 18 command, and then we can dim this array. Now what we want to be sure to do is restore that state. So what I'll probably do is either right here we could put a .19, or we could do it at the start of the program where we're going to have our overlay, and that's probably what I'll show you here in a second. So let's go to the next step. So we just went ahead and we saved our temporary version of the core file. Now it tells us to merge in the XXX small overlay. So in 8.0, 8.1, and 8.1 alpha, there's a file called XXX small. This is a overlay that will function, has all the main command stuff that you need in an overlay, and you can put your game into it. So we're going to do a merge in XXX small. So I'm going to go ahead and pull from our D64 masters, third disk of the masters, there's XXX small. So we're going to go ahead and attach that, and we're going to merge. And it will start merging. So we'll fast forward. Alright, so we have merged. There's our overlay. Alright, so we did our overlay merge, and now we're at step 6. It says to update line 5 to the new jump area of the core code, which is our line 3600. So I'm going to go ahead and list line 5. Okay, what is the rest of this doing? So as we execute the file, it's going into this line 3600 and that, or 36,000, excuse me. And then when we return, we're going to do this go sub 489 that selects the system drive, and that's going to load overlay 2. So it's going to return back. Now in 8.1 alpha, since this is a game, I'll probably change this to BBS games, because that's the module that actually originally called out, and then we'll return back to the main menu of BBS games. One thing to point out while you're in the code here, in Color 64.737, the print function was served with a string. So they would say a string equals something, and then they do a print. So when you get to lines that have a string, and then they do a print, a string equals something, they do a print, you can actually replace that with just print this. That does consolidate space for you. If you want to do it, it will function fine the way it is. But in something like right here at line 36620, so this is using up a lot of space. So if I were to actually count these spaces and then use Control Y for the CR, for the carriage return, another count the spaces, I could replace these spaces with the MCI command tab. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now they're using a regular print function here, so we're going to place that with print. I don't need a string. And then we're going to do MCI tab 28 spaces, and then we had a carriage return, MCI tab 21 spaces, and looks like another carriage return, MCI tab 20, and that's going to replace all this. Now the only thing you'd have to watch out for if you're going to do that kind of replacement is at line 36220, is it using an A string of what the A string contained? Is it doing some sort of function against that? If it is, then you need that A string, right? But otherwise you don't. So we'll look at 36220, and nope, it's not doing a function against the previous A string. It's actually assigning a new value to the A string. In this case, they immediately print again, so we can actually do this and remove that. So you can consolidate your code down, make the module smaller. If it's a big one, a big module, big game, then this is something you'll really want to look at. Where can you consolidate? And you'll also find that a lot of the programming that they did, you can change some things. Another nuance is like in 8.1, they don't need then statements if there's not a value versus a value. So like in this case, I can't do it because I got a 0 then, and then 36650. If I move that then out, it's not going to make sense in the code. But other than statements you can remove. So like this one does not equal iString, then 36720. I could actually take that out if I wanted to, and the code would understand what that means. Something like this. This is a great one. If P, then return. I could just say if P, return. So you can consolidate down. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Let me get back to my original disk since we're in the masters right now. And I have 60 blocks free, so this should save. I'm going to go ahead and call it new wheel 2. Another thing I like to do in this is at line 1, decide what your module is going to be called. So this is Wheel of Fortune. Probably just go ahead and call it, let's call it BBS Wheel. And this makes it really easy to update. So whenever I'm going to do an update on it, I just list one and then I take out that rem statement and it'll save it. The @ symbol there is going to say replace if it exists. Okay, so I think I'm ready. I'm going to go ahead and merge it into my run on the BBS here. One of the things I will look at here is, since I'm running 8.1 alpha, I'm going to use the auxiliary 3 area. That's where I'm going to dump the new overlay. So it's going to be on LU2 user 3. LU2 user 3. Just make sure I'm in the right area, and yep, that looks like a bunch of games. Now this is the Linux version that I'm using right here. That's where my BBS is at. So it's a little different to get my disks in order. But let's make sure what I got for drive 10. Make sure I'm a 1541. And I'm not, so I'm going to make it a 1541. We'll attach the D64 that I did. So I should be able to get all right. And now I'm just going to save it. Look at it one more time. Looks good. It looks like the regular file. Now I will say once in a while you're going to find, like in the merge statements, or if you have to do any find and replaces, sometimes that will mess up. It's old school computers. So you might see some problems as you go through it. This is our test phase, right? So we're going to try to see if we see anything that will trip up the program or what have you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to check out our BBS Games module. So if you remember, we talked about we have this programming how-to tip, adding games to 8.10 alpha, and it tells you where to go to start setting up your information. So the user is going to have a selection. It gets stored in a string, and then we set a flag, and if there's a valid flag set, it's going to load that program. So here's that area of the program. We're getting the key from the user, and then we're going to process. So if they entered a 1, it's for Empire. If they entered a 2, that's my game called War Games. If they entered a 3, etc., etc. So right down here, right after 36203, we're going to enter a new line. That's going to load our BBS wheel program. And then I like putting a little message there. So this is going to be Wheel of Fortune. Then I set iString to the file name. And then I set a flag that this is a game. So when it runs this code now, I don't have to have it in the actual menu shown to the user yet because we're in a test mode. But it will be looking for this command when I run the BBS. If I type 5, it's going to load that program. Now we're still in the BBS Games module. Now remember, one thing I told you about is that we want to be able to remove the variable stack. Now you can see I've got a .19 command here. That is from when we loaded the BBS Games module itself. So we're still going to need another .19 in the BBS wheel, and I don't think we ever did that yet. So I'm going to go ahead and save the BBS Games where I'm at right now. I'm going to load back BBS wheel. And right here, I'm going to insert a .19. And also, I'm going to have this return to BBS Games instead. So hopefully that makes sense. So we're at the BBS Games module. The user hits number 5. It loads this program. It's going to jump to line 3600, 36,000. I got to quit doing that. Executes program, clears the variable space at that point, then goes back and loads the BBS game module back in. Hopefully this will run. So we're going to check it out and see. All right, so test run. We're going to get back to LU0, user 0, load up our BBS. All right, so we're going to see how this puppy runs. I'm hoping that seemed way too easy. I've had a lot more difficulty on conversion sometimes, so we're going to see how this works. All right, so we're going to go to our games module. And it was option number 5. Let's see what happens. All right, so it looks like something happened with 460. And this, what it's going to be is you're going to have to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. So we'll have to take a look at BBS wheel 460. The other thing I was thinking about is it asked if I wanted instructions. I'm not sure if that's a sequential file. I have to see what 460 is. So first I'm going to see, what does 460 do? Go to our generic routines. All right, so it's trying to select a file group. So maybe what they were trying to do is select system drive. I'm not sure. So let's see what's going on in the code. So I think I'll probably try to find that keyword instruction. All right, so do you want instructions? Then they go subbed 1010 to see what the user said. We said yes. It set the file name to wheel ins, and then it tried to open and print it. And then it went back, selected the drive, and said wheel words. So I'm betting it probably happened right here. Now, one thing about the BBS is it won't choke if that file doesn't exist, the wheel.ins. That won't choke. Here, we're doing go sub 481. And you'll see right here, go sub 481 actually selects the system files drive. We don't want that. We want to stay on the same drive we were at. That's problem number one. Now remember the error was in 460. If you look at 481 here, sets h equal to 1 goes to 460, and that's where we crashed. And if you look at 460, it's actually trying to set the drive. We don't need any of that. So what I'm going to do first is remove this. Don't need the 481. 510 is just checking for an error. If there's an error, then it's going to jump somewhere. What does concern me is that we don't have a file called wheel words. I don't know if that's supposed to come with a game. We're supposed to make one. So I'm going to have to look back in those disks and see if somebody's had one, or I'm going to have to try to make one myself. Now, if I look down further into it, you'll see that we do an initial input of a value, and then we start randomizing on that value. So the first line in that file is probably how many words are in the file. And then it's going to go and start through that randomization, pick a word. That actually makes me wonder if I could just use the message editor and make a file called that. But I think first things first is I want to make sure that we don't have any more of those go sub 481s. Now I do expect it to find it in the main overlay, the one we merged in, but in any line 36,000, got it again, or above, we got one more it looks like. Alright, so we nailed that. We're going to go ahead and save that. Alright, so I think at this point I'm going to load the message editor and try to make a file and see if that's going to fix it. Alright, so I just want to make sure I understood what the file name is. We're going to load up editor. Alright, and we are on LU2 user 3. Alright, so let's say we're going to select 5 words. Alright, so we save that, and you can see I'm still at LU2 user 3. And if I dir wheel words, we have a file. Try it again. Okay, we're back up. Let's check it out. Ha, guess what? Alright, so let's spin. Let's see, we know the 5 words. Let's try a W. Nope, that doesn't look like that worked. I have no idea what this means as far as the display here. Let's try a C. Nope. Let's try B. Y, no. So I'm thinking maybe it's not working. Not sure if that's working. Oh, and see when I quit, looks like I tried to load 460 again. So we've got something after the end of the game, probably back at line 5 that we have to correct. All right, so we're going to go back to LU2 user 3 and we're going to load ES wheel and look at line 5. There it is. We did a go sub 489. I shouldn't have done that. That's system drive. All right, so that takes care of that. So I'm looking at the code, and remember when we entered all the words, they were in lowercase. So here it's getting the word, it assigns it to F string, and then it's going to walk through F string and pull out each character. And it's not doing a conversion. If you remember when I entered those words, they were showing in uppercase. So I'm betting that maybe my lowercase doesn't equal uppercase. So with Color 64 versions 8.0 and above, there's an easy way to convert that. So if you go to the programming features and you go to ML functions, right there at 21, it's an alpha character only, lowercase filter. So it returns everything in lowercase. Another one to consider for a game like this would be probably at 2. Find a substring. So if we're looking for a specific character, it'll identify where that character was found. So I think next I'm going to look at what happens after the user selects spin and we go to this 36290 area. Okay, so right there at line 36370 we're saying enter a letter and then we get it. And then we assign it right there to iString. So I'm thinking right there we could put that function to convert a string to lowercase. The other problem we'll have to look at though is it might work. All the other comparisons are in capital. Okay. So that's going to make sure that a string is returned in lowercase and put into iString. Then we're going to go to 36540. And there we are doing a comparison. So that might have saved it. I'm not sure. So we will try it again. Now thinking about it, the more elegant solution probably would have been to just load up the editor and do everything in uppercase. And I may go ahead and end up doing that, but let's just go ahead and see how this works now. Okay, so we're going to do our spin. And we know our words were Itchy Butt, Westwood, Color, BBS, Commodore, or Petsky. It's going to be one of those. So we'll try P. Hey, I bet you I know what the word is. Do a spin. And we'll get an S. I bet you I know what the word is. Let's go ahead and try it. Okay, so we got a syntax error in 36620, and also when I inputted the word, it didn't catch it. And we'll have to check out that line, see what the syntax error was. Alright, first thing I'm going to do, I went ahead and changed all the words back to uppercase. So I'm going to find where we did that at 21. Go ahead and remove that. Then 36620 was a syntax error. So that's actually where I did a print statement, and right there I've got an equal sign there. That will not work. Alright, try it again. Boom! Do we have a working program? Alright, so we might have to see what happens after we get the high score, and it has to do the file. It was creating a file called wheel high, I believe. Obviously, something's going on here. So it looks like I'll have to break out of this. So I'm going to go ahead and reset. Okay, so it looks like it created the wheel high file, so that's good. Okay, so that's where we created it right there, 36564. So it printed the values to the file, closed the file, then it cleared the information in that dimension array of a string. And it looks like at that point it cleared the screen, printed the word, which we saw that happen, and then it's supposed to go to 160. 160 in the overlay is just print a string with the carriage return. So I'm listing that here, and you can see then we do a return statement. So whenever we go subbed for this, they're effectively using that return statement. This brings up a good point that I was talking about where they are using a string. They expected to be able to print that, and then they were going to return from this routine. So an alternative that we could have done is we could do a print statement there and then say return. So I think where I want to start is probably right here where the user does a guess, 36270. If they say yes, they want to guess, we do an immediate hard jump to 36580. So we enter our guess, otherwise we go to 36510, and that's where we won. Now these are all hard jumps, and then we do a return when we do that final print. That's where we hung up at. That was on that go to 160 line. So I might have found something here, and this could have been the cause of it. I'm not sure. We'll have to test it. But back here, we did a go sub right after we dimensioned and set up our variables. Did a go sub to 36020 where we start the game. And then afterwards, they have a go to statement, which goes right to the next line. And we do a bunch of clearing, again, of our variable space, which is effectively the .19 command, which I have back on line 5, and we return back to that area. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Now we know that this is jumping to the very next line, which is having that return, so I'm just going to say return ret run, and this line can go away. I'm wondering if that's what hung us up, because if you look back here at line 5, we did that go sub, and then we do that clear variable space, and then we reload games. Now, we asked for that clear. I don't know what that means after we did all that poke stuff that 7.37 used to do. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that up, and we'll test it. Well, the good news is that my high score file is working. That's good. Looks like we have the word itchy butt again, so I'm going to go ahead and do the guess. We won, and it went back out. I think that's the way it was supposed to work. Now, one thing I'll show, this shows me what my stack is right now. I don't think I have this implemented in the pre-builds that I pushed out, but this tells me that I successfully left the stack of the game, and I'm back in BBS game stack. So if I quit to main menu, it should be down to 1. Yep, and we're good there. So the .19 command was successfully processed out of the BBS games. So we'll go back in. So far it looks like everything's running right. So this looks like it's going to be the word Petski. Nice. Uh-oh. Okay, so this told me that we did not hit our stack, or the variable killer, command .19. Something happened there. So I'll have to go ahead and tweak that. Otherwise, this program's working, but this would eventually cause a BBS crash if I don't figure this out. Okay, so I think I found part of the problem. Now in BBS games, I had already done a .18 to save the variable state. And that's when we actually load the file. You'll see that right here at line 36300. I've printed what the command was from the user. We do a .18, we select our games drive, and then we load that file. So if I look in our BBS wheel program, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this. The only thing you'd have to watch out for in doing that is this dim statement. If you tried to rerun the program immediately and it re-executed this line, then you're going to get your dimension error. It's already dimensioned. But in the design that it's currently at, it always exits back to the games menu. So we shouldn't see a problem with this. Okay, so on this run, I'm going to check how we're tracking our stack for the variables. So we're at 0 right now. Go into the games menu. We're now at 1. That's correct. Quit. Quitters never win. Okay, we're back at 1. That's good. We're back at 1. So now it's working. It's working perfect. So this is near ready, and I probably listed up here as a beta like I did some of the other programs, and let it run, and then just monitor the caller log for any errors that users might experience. The other thing we'll have to watch out for is that we have to make our own instruction file, or we have to find the existing one if there was one. And outside of that, it's pretty much done. The only other thing I'd consider is maybe doing some code cleanup, kind of bringing this down some in the amount of space it takes, the use of the print strings, maybe, implement some of the shortcuts that Color64 allows you to do. So a lot of these thin statements can maybe be removed. Obviously the spaces can be removed. There's even a couple of other shortcuts you could look at, like the Z1 equals Z1 plus 1. Color64 8.0 and above, you could just say Z parentheses 1 plus, and then the rest can go away. So there are other shortcuts like that. Outside of that, this is ready to go. So from there we could go ahead, get our games menu, and we can add our new file there. So depending on your menu setup, Kaleidoscope may be easier to be the program of choice to edit your menu. So in this case, that's exactly what I'm doing. Okay, so we determined our core source code area, which was starting at line 3600, deleted all the code leading up to that core code. Then we did a conversion, and we looked for our sys statements, C0, 1, 5. So looked for any pokes. I didn't see any poke-Cs. We didn't have any of those, although we did have the weird nuance with the .18 and the .19 command. Those replaced our peak. Where were they? The peak 48s and 49s areas. I also did look for some of the other ones. I did a general search, sysc, parentheses. Didn't find anything else in there. Also looked for the peak C statements, didn't see any in there. We saved our temporary version, then we merged in XXX small, and at that point we went ahead and started cleaning up code. We made sure that we changed line 5 to the new jump area where the core code reside, and then we added it over to our BBS games menu. Now for those not in the 8.1 alpha version, like I said, it's a little different for you guys because you're going to be using the mod menu, and you'll have to follow the original documentation that deals with mod menu. Now if you are one of those people, you'll want to come to this section, BBS operation, using the mod menu and follow those instructions on how to incorporate your game into it. All the steps leading up to that for the conversion from 7.37 up to the current version 8 series of Color64 apply still. So hopefully you guys found this useful, and it'll help you in building your repertoire for your BBS. We now have another game added to Westwood BBS for trial run. Thanks guys.